Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this special episode, which will mark the rebranding of the Cutting Edge with gmoney to Admit One, which is also the name of the membership community that I started on Wednesday. This is an information session where I'm joined by my good friend, Gregg Schoenberg of Westcott Capital, who's been a longtime advisor to me, as well as to a bunch of hedge funds, venture capital firms, and Web3 startups. He's a podcaster, an angel investor, a diehard NFT collector, and a crypto trader, and founder of the Financial Revolutionist Media Company. But more importantly, he's been a really good friend, and there's really nobody I'd rather sit in the hot seat to discuss my new project with, which I believe is the most important project in my career. Gregg, thanks for coming on, and feel free to go nuts.
Gee, what's up? Honored to be here on this very important day for you. I'm totally excited for you, and it's a great privilege to be here as you take the next step in your career. Um, for those people who are not aware of why this is such a big week for you, can you just give everyone a brief overview of Admit One and the marketplace that you're launching?
So Admit One is a 1,000 member NFT community that I launched on Wednesday. I really wanted to get a good cross section of what I consider some of the brightest minds of the NFT community, as well as diverse viewpoints. But I also wanted to reward my POAP holders who are, my day ones, the people that have been supporting gmoney since the very beginning, right? Because POAPs, there's no financial incentive. There never was to collect the POAP or to support gmoney in any kind of way. And this was kind of my way of tokenizing my community and saying, hey, like, I know what I have planned, and I very very explicitly in the manifesto said that I wouldn't be ever issuing a roadmap, but I definitely have a roadmap that I'm working towards, and I know that this community is going to be a vital part of it.
Awesome. Well, we'll talk a little bit about that decision in a bit, but talk about the genesis of the idea where you said, you know what, I'm going to actually launch my own NFT. Oh, and by the way, while I'm at it, I'm also going to launch a marketplace too.
Oh yeah, I let's talk about the marketplace for a second because
Okay.
I forgot about that. But yeah, I think the marketplace is super key, right? Because I think when you take a look at how the consumer has behaved over the last 100 years in the Western world, is we like very curated experiences, right? When you take a look at why department stores have proliferated, in the meat space, right? They proliferated because of their curation, right? Like you could go individually to a lot of different stores and shop it at these brands. But what would save you the most time is going to one store where they have a curation that you appreciate as a buyer, and you will pay that premium to them, right? As opposed to giving it directly to the store. And so you take a look at that in the real world, but then you take a look at it of how that translates online. And if we go back 20, 25 years at the genesis of the internet, you had these super sites, your eBays, where you could go on there and you could buy whatever it was that you wanted. And that was like the simplest form and way to transact. And then you take a look at it now and you see very curated experiences, much like you see in the real world, right? Where you have these curated experiences where you can walk into one boutique and get all things from that brand, but then there could be things where you want one person's perspective or a couple different people's perspective. And I think over time we just start seeing a move away from that, let's call it like warehouse mentality, that superstore mentality, and moving towards a very curated experience. And to me it makes sense. That to me is where the space is going, and I always want to be going moving in the direction of where things are going and not where they are at the moment.
So when was that light bulb? When were you like, okay, I'm going to do this?
It was Honestly, it was the opening party of the Pixelated exhibition that I did with Justin Aversano and Save Art Space, where we put 100 CryptoPunks on billboards throughout Miami. And we had the opening party. And up until that point, NFTs were just a trade for me. It was a really good risk adjusted bet where I knew I had really good upside and I knew exactly what my downside was. But it was really like during that party and then afterwards, as I was thinking about it, was like, wow, this is going to be really big. NFTs are going to be really huge. And this was still, this was March of last year. And NFTs, like people still didn't know what they were, right? And people didn't know the term NFT. And I was like, all right, I know that this is going to be very big. I know that I want to build a community around myself ultimately, but I want to be very deliberate. Like, I don't want to, and I think, and this speaks to conversations that I always have with creators when they come into the space where people are like, they see the money and they see the opportunity and they're like, okay, well, let me drop something so that I can get some money now to to fund either growth initiatives or lifestyle or whatever it is. And I was like, I wanted to be very deliberate with it, right? Like I didn't want to necessarily I didn't I know that when you're like at the cutting edge, you're definitely going to be making mistakes, right? Because nothing's ever perfect, because that's what trailblazers do, right? And that you're never going to shoot 1,000%. But I knew that I still had time, because if the space was going to grow to the point that I think it's going to grow, a million, 2 million, 10 million people in the space is still minuscule compared to the global population. So I it was a very deliberate and thoughtful approach that I knew I wanted to do, but I knew would take time to build it out the way I wanted to.
Let's talk about some personal timing here, because like you're doing a ton of stuff, right? You're investing, you're looking after your bags, you are you're doing this podcast, you're building your name in the fashion world, you're advising, I believe you're advising some fashion brands on how to enter the Web3 space with authenticity. And I have to say, like you've been a good friend to me and a lot of other people, and I know you give a lot of your time just giving advice and the like. So you have your plate full, and yet you are doing this. So, um, talk to me about like why now?
Yeah, why now? I think the timing, when I take a look at last cycle in crypto, and I was fortunate enough that it I felt like crypto tech was going to change the world, but I thought it was too early. And at
Right.
that point I was like, I'm going to sell and then I'm going to come back. And then when I came back, a lot of the friends that I had made in the last cycle were heads down building like the entire time, right? And as I was coming back into the space, and I was like, okay, like now the thesis is even stronger, right? Because at the time, the miscalculation I made was I thought that blockchain adoption would take 5 to 7 years, and really like people started building really cool stuff within 2 years, right? So I had miscalculated on how long it would take. And so, I very much vowed to myself when I came back into the space in March of 2020 that this cycle, I was like all in, right? Like once it started making sense to me, I was like, oh, this is it. This is the future, and it's way closer. I initially thought it was 7, 10 years out. It's like 5 years out, maybe even less, right? So that was a decision I made to myself personally, that I was definitely going to stick around through the bear and build, right? And I'm not a coder, so I'm not going to necessarily be building a protocol, but I see the space a little bit differently than most. And for that, it's like, when I see something, it's like, oh, I think that that's a really cool and innovative idea. Rather than wait for somebody to go do it, it's like, why not just do it on my own? And one of the foundations of this community is I know I have a group of people that want to do the same thing, that have the same vision that I do, right? That this is the future, and let's build it together. And for me, it's like, especially as the community grows over time, how can I have an incentivized community to build with me, right? To kind of spread that gospel. And to me, there's no better time to do it than when we're, what are we, like 50, 60% off the highs in Ethereum, and more depending on, what kind of alts you're in, and this and that. So, for me, like, this is the time to do it, as opposed to doing something like in max hype to necessarily like maximize profit or whatever.
Well, I want to just kind of go a little deeper there, though. I saw a tweet that you shared out a couple of weeks ago, I think, saying, this is not a time to be a hero, and you have to survive to live the other side. You and I have talked about this. We've both been traders for a long period of time. And, obviously people who have been in the space for a long time are still up dramatically, but people who've gotten into the space more recently are hurting. So I'm wondering, did it give you any pause at all when people are just looking at, red on their screen all day to say, gee, is this the right time?
I felt like it was. I mean, it was a free mint, right? So I think that was something that me and my team, and you were definitely involved in those conversations from really early on. Is this is a conversation we've had since January, right? Like I've known I wanted to do this since January, and I wanted to make sure I did it right. I wanted to make sure I had the right team, I had the right feel, and that I was ready to do it. And a lot of the reason why we chose now is because of the things that I know that I'm working on, and knowing that I want to have a community like this. To me, the market conditions right now is bet. I'd rather do it now, and people sleep on admit one, rather than at the height of a bull market when people are FOMOing in, right, and spending max amounts.
Yeah, I'm not so sure people are going to be sleeping on admit one, but I totally hear you. And I have to admit, when you were playing around with the idea of doing a free mint and you asked me what I thought, I was one of the skeptics at first. And the more I thought about it, and I think we had a couple of follow-up conversations, the more I could see that your conviction on it was growing. And obviously, given the market conditions now, that certainly is helpful. But talk a little bit about why that was so important to you. What was the thing about a free mint that made you say, this is authentic to me and the brand that I want to build?
Yeah, well, I think one of those things is definitely the fact that, I want to reward the people that have been with me since the beginning. I think that that is super important. And then also, I think equally as important is, rather than me set some arbitrary price of what I think it's worth, because we went through a ton of different models, right? Like, is there, some sort of allow this to mint at a certain price, a Dutch auction, an English auction, like every kind of auction. We spoke to so many teams, and so many people in the space, just trying to make sure that, weighing the pros and cons of each, right? Because there are pros to each type of sale type, and negatives. And to me, it's, you know I ultimately settled with the free mint because I think it's a great way to give back to the community. The people that have supported me when there was no other reason to support me, other than, I was this crypto punk ape running around on Twitter. Two is to sit there and give back to these people. And then, most importantly, I think what's really cool is it's a little bit of an homage to CryptoPunks, right? CryptoPunks were free to claim. All you had to pay was the gas. And, CryptoPunks for me, I think, are the creme de la creme of projects in the space, right? I think that no matter what happens, CryptoPunks will stand the test of time. And, you know, running off that model, being like, making something free to claim, I think is super powerful in the space. And, right now, as we speak, I don't know what the floor is, but, I obviously could have sold it for above zero. And, to me, it's one of those things that, I think that it's better for the community to grow alongside together. Our incentives are much more aligned. We're aligned 100%, as opposed to, not 100%. Somewhere that's not totally aligned. Yeah, it makes me super bullish to kind of build with a group of people, of a community.
Well, you're an inherently modest guy, and so you're not going to say it, but I can say it, which is, um, when we were talking about it, I was worried that anything people get for free, they may, not value, like water and the like. But I could tell that, this was really important to you. You wanted to pay homage to the punks. It was also, I think, a sign of security, and the fact that you didn't feel like you needed to make money straight away. That inevitably there will be opportunities for the organization that you have built to be rewarded appropriately. But I take my hats off to you. I don't have a hat on, but if I did, I would take it off for you. And I have a feeling that there are going to be other people that follow in your lead. I have a strong feeling that once again, you are going to prove to be, on the cutting edge, so to speak, even though that's not the name of your podcast
Mhm.
anymore. It's still very much who you are and what you do. Another notable feature that I want you to talk about is your decision not to publish a roadmap. I love it. And I took note of the fact, and by the way, like everyone should read your manifesto. It's fantastic. And a lot of the things that you put up on the site are great. And you say, quote, I will not make superficial promises about what I will do for the community. And that's some shade there. So talk about the subtext of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now, especially in a bear market, right? Like people prices of people's bags are down, right? So people want to be making money. And I think one of the things as a participant in the NFT community for the last, few years, I've noticed that what teams will do in order to kind of raise the floor, right? They'll make these promises that they can't deliver on, right? Whether it be a video game or real world utility or whatever, right? That's, the meme really, really hits strongly for when utility. And so to me, it's, I don't want to be beholden to a roadmap because uh, from just the way opportunities come to me, a lot of times they come out of nowhere, right? Like I could be planning for something, I could have my game plan for the next 6 months laid out, but something could happen. I think Wolf Game is a perfect example, right? I had no plans of playing Wolf Game for, when I first bought the Wolf. And then, it gets announced and I'm like, okay, well, I'm playing Wolf Game, right? So even all the plans that I had in place, which was this community launch included, now this is thrown into the mix. So to me, it's like a roadmap with the amount of opportunities that are out there in the space and the amount of work that needs to be done. A roadmap to me can sometimes be a little bit superficial, but also, I know that I'm working on really exciting things, having conversations with really exciting partners that I can't disclose, especially up front. And I want to be able to bring to my community and have my community be involved with it. But people just have to trust the fact that I'm making the right decision. I think I have a track record in the space where I've gained people's trust with regards to decision making and adoption and integrity, and I hope that people come along with that ride. And so for that reason, I very much say no to a roadmap because even though I have one internally and I know what my plan is and where I want to go and where I want to bring the community with me, I don't necessarily want to, let's say, the right term would be prying eyes of being like, oh, maybe you should do this, or backseat drivers, right? Like backseat drivers that are trying to tell me where I think it should go. I'm always open to criticism and feedback, but a lot of times too, when I sit there, is like I have my vision for where I see myself in the space and where I see the space in the future, and I really want to execute on that.
I'm going to throw another one in
Mhm.
there, and you tell me if maybe this also had something to do with it. When you think about the way public companies behave now, right? They have earnings calls. And after a while, it seems that they are managing to those earnings calls because the last thing they would want to do is disappoint their investors. But those investors tend to be very short term. I mean, the whole reason why Twitter is going private is because Elon knows that you can do a lot more creatively and be a lot more agile when you're a private company. And having a roadmap isn't exactly like being a publicly reported company, but you do get this sense that you get hemmed in a little bit.
Mhm.
And if the whole point of what you want to do is be agile to where trends go and to lead trends, it strikes me that a roadmap is constraining in a way. Was that kind of part of it too?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great analogy, right? Like, I think sometimes when people whether they're publicly traded companies or even, teams that are issuing a roadmap, right? It's if you have these goals that you need to set, need to hit on like a 90-day or 120-day, 180-day basis, right? That's you're very narrow and focused, right? And you can't necessarily see the forest from the trees. And I think that again, like one of those things is something as simple as, okay, like I don't need to sell a mint. I don't need to raise money for this. Whereas, if there was a roadmap, right, of like where the funding comes from, or being a public company, where it's like, okay, this is an event for us to maximize profit, or increase funding, and I have the ability to kind of say, okay, market conditions have changed. I think that we should go this route. I will take people's advice into it, but I do think that not having a roadmap and not having been beholden to it, it allows you to really zoom out and see, okay, what's the 5-year plan, what's the 10-year plan, and what decision can I make and execute on today to help me get closer to that goal, as opposed to hitting a short-term goal.
So, can you share anything about the angle or the vibe that you want to create with your community? I mean, we've talked about this. Proof has its own vibe. VFriends do. There are obviously several dozen PFP programs that have communities with a certain feel. Others seem very, indistinguishable from each other. So, when you think about the vibe and angle you want to create, what is going to be the hallmark? What's going to differentiate that?
So yeah, I I don't want to give too much away, because
I know. I'm going to keep
yeah,
asking you.
you know,
Let me give a
I'm
little.
working on a lot of cool things. I think, every community has its own vibe. I think anybody that's been following me closely over the last several months to a year probably has somewhat of an idea of where I'm planning on going, and what the vibe of the community is going to be. And I'm really excited to share it. We're still probably a few weeks away from something, but I think it's gonna be really exciting, and I think the people that are part of the community are gonna be right there with me, and we're gonna trailblaze together, and I think it's gonna be great.
So, in your curated list, and you put this right on the site, 59% of those people that were lucky enough to get passes were women. I don't think that was an accident. Talk a little bit about your thinking there.
Yeah, I think I've used my podcast and my platform to try to help women and minorities have a bigger platform to speak on, right? And I think this falls right into that. You want to take a look at what the distribution is in crypto with regards to men and women, and it's overwhelmingly male, right? And it's like, how do we get that right? Because you need, I think, that those different perspectives for creativity to flourish, right? Because everybody has a different human experience, and that different human experience allows you to have a different perspective, which I think leads to great ideas, right? One of the reasons that I started the G Money account to begin with was because I know that if I can help people understand about NFTs that much faster, then we're going to get this boon in creativity that much quicker. And so, it's like, if I want to sit here and be the only person that thinks about NFT use cases, then we're never going to be using NFTs. But if I can help understand different people from different walks of life, if I can help teach them so that they understand the beauty of the technology and how they could possibly use it, then they go back in their creative process and they're like, oh well, what if I did it this way, and I did it slightly different but had my own twist, right? And I think we kind of see that with the rise of membership tokens, right, with myself included, where every founder and every team is going to have their version and their twist of it and their execution of it. And I think that that's a beautiful thing, right? Because we're still really, really early in the whole process.
I mean, how many times have you walked into a gathering and it's all dudes? And, it can often feel like a fraternity. I mean, I would imagine that part of this has been from your own experience too, of just being in those settings where you're like, this does not represent the
Right.
world.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, right? There's been so many events where I've walked into even, maybe 10%, 20% women when, they're half of the world's population. So, why are they massively underrepresented? One of the reasons behind the free mint as well was the fact that if I did, charge 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 ETH, a lot of people get priced out of it, right? So, people that I would have wanted in the community can't actually make it into the community because they can't afford it, right? So, then again, that's going back, and even not just from a male female perspective, but it's like, you're getting like just whale perspective, right? And not necessarily a larger demographic of people.
Totally, totally. Well, I think it's great that you did it. I think it's going to add a huge amount to the vibe of the community in the future. And so it is another instance where you're just trailblazing ahead. Um, let's talk about the G Money brand, which you have built meticulously and have done an absolutely brilliant job of it. By virtue of this community, of course, you're going to have 1,000 new members in your extended family of
Mhm.
sorts. And, you know, your punk and who you are have been inextricably linked, ever since you came on the scene with that, I think, iconic tweet thread that you dropped about a year and a half ago. And so I'm wondering, did you struggle with the idea that by virtue of the fact that you're now running a community, it could sort of accelerate your doxification? And obviously, once you start start getting recognized on the street and the like, you can't go back, you can't undox. So was that a factor in your thinking behind doing this?
I mean, it's something I've thought about literally since I started the account. I've always operated under I wanted to be super authentic to who I was, right? I wanted so that when people meet me in real life, they say G Money is exactly the person who I thought he was. And they wouldn't be like, oh, he's totally different on Twitter. And that to me is I've always operated from that route. And as I've been building a higher profile and I've been having a lot of these conversations with brands in the real world, companies in the real world, celebrities in the real world, it seems like it's something that at some point will be inevitable. Um, I'm working towards that because again, like I said, I've been in the space thinking about this since day one, and I'm kind of playing it by ear. I know that I have a lot of brand value and integrity behind G Money, so that people can tell you, even not knowing who I am and what I look like, or what my name is, or what my phone number is, or something like. I'm fairly certain I can do very large deals with people trustlessly. Where they will trust me, and I will trust them, and in these interactions. So it's definitely something I've thought about. I've been working slowly towards it, and I'm playing it by ear, I guess, at this point.
All right, two more questions for you. Um, First, the easier question. From your vantage point, how has the minting process gone? Are you feeling good about where you are at this juncture of this, very big week for you and your team, who, by the way, is
Yeah,
awesome?
at first I wanna give a congratulations to everybody on the team. You guys, everybody crushed it. I feel like I had a team of Navy SEALs that really executed, did it flawlessly. I couldn't be any happier than the way it went. For me, one of besides just the distribution of distributing the NFT for free, was no gas war, right? And right here, as we're sitting, right, because we're recording this on Thursday evening, is we have about 750 total mints, and it's going slowly and steadily and great, right? Because that's the last thing I wanted, right? I'm not necessarily concerned about selling out. I know that there's plenty of demand for these spots, and I know that I can distribute it and get it into the hands of people that I think will be really valuable community members. And like I'm just really ecstatic with how this is going. I think the two things that I really wanted to solve for, which was distribution and no gas wars, have really been taken care of. And we there was it's funny because if you on Wednesday morning, uh, myself and the team were like, okay, so what happens if we don't mint out? And then on Thursday morning, we were like, okay, what happens if there's like a gas war and everything mints out in 1 2 seconds? So I'm really glad the way it's going. It seems like slow and steady. I'm really happy with the distribution. The people that are jumping into the Discord have been great. The conversation has been flowing. The vibes have been really, really good. Somebody posted in the Discord saying that it feels like spring, summer of 2021, which was obviously a great time for the NFT market. But to me, I'm really happy with the execution. I also know that this is just the beginning, right? But it's not necessarily even like for me. It's like, oh, this is the beginning where the real work starts. This is work that I would be doing regardless. As I start sharing more about my story and my vision, I think it'll start becoming apparent to people that whether I had a community or not, I'd be going down this path, and I just want to bring more of my homies on for the ride.
Well, and having a community creates a form factor for that I think is going to work out great. And assuming that this podcast drops on Saturday, a quick glance at the calendar tells me that it is 513 days, or roughly 12.3 thousand hours, since you announced that you had spent your 140 ETH on 8219. You've done so much since then. We're not going to go through the list, but there are just a ton of firsts in that. And I'm just wondering, talk about how you keep motivated and where that's coming from to do even more things, because you've already done so much.
Yeah, I mean, I think what keeps me motivated now is definitely, when I take a look at all the tech that's out there and how can we apply it, right, to the real world, and how can we use this to better people's lives, and how can we do something cool and innovative, right? And as much as I love talking to a lot of these brands for increased adoption, I know a lot of them won't be doing the most innovative things, and that's fine, right? Because I think every participant in the ecosystem has their role, right? Like there's the programmers and the builders, there's the people that help spread the gospel, which I think I've really been a huge part of, right? Like helping people help explain things in terms people understand. But now as I take a look at like the application layer, right, is like how do we take this awesome tech and how do I interpret it in my way and utilize it in the things that I think will be cool and fun to work with, right? It's like I'm working the hardest I've ever worked in my entire life. I wake up every single day, whether it's like, on 4 hours sleep, 5 hours sleep, 8 hours of sleep, depending on the night. I don't have an alarm clock. I wake up every day. I'm happy to wake up. Sometimes it's exhausting for sure because I'm spending so much time working, but it's really, really fulfilling, right? And like I really have a good time and really enjoy it. And especially, Greg, you've been on a couple of the calls with me where when I just kind of go off for like 5 or 10 minutes talking about like what I think is going to be amazing and awesome about what we're working on.
Maybe
Yeah.
15 or
So,
20, G.
where I really just get really excited. And to me, it's more about like, cool, like what can we do to impact and change the world and change how people interact with each other and use tech in their lives. And that to me is really what gets me out of bed in the morning now.
Do dope shit with dope people.
Yep.
All right, man. Well, listen, congratulations to you and the team. Uh, get a great meal, get some sleep. You deserve it. And can't wait to see what happens in the future with Admit One.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for coming on. You have been a very trusted advisor and giving me a lot of good ideas and being a good person to bounce ideas off of. So I really appreciate everything that you've done for me and looking forward to having you be an active member of the community.
Thank you, my friend. Honored to have the mic on the rebranding of the podcast. Very exciting.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for everybody for listening in. This is awesome. I'm going to be pretty active in the Discord. So, if you are a member of Admit One, I plan on talking to you in there. And if you want to learn more, obviously, Twitter is the place to be. Go read the manifesto or check out g.money. and you can get all the information there.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.